There's a vehicle you can buy brand new right now for $3,000. It survived 10 years in Antarctica. It ran for a decade at -65 degrees without a single cold weather modification, and it's completely illegal for you to own in the United States. That's not number 1 on this list. That's only number 2. Okay, so 1991. Gulf War. Chinese military officials are watching CNN and they're seeing American Humvees just tear through the Iraqi desert like the terrain doesn't exist. And the response from Beijing was basically, we need that yesterday. What they came up with is the Dongfeng EQ 2050. And look, on the surface, yeah, it looks like a Humvee knockoff. Wide stance, flat hood, that same aggressive silhouette. But here's where it gets uncomfortable. The military variant, the EQ 2058, uses non-composite materials on the hood and doors, not for strength, for stealth. Specifically to reduce its infrared signature. The thermal imaging systems that make modern military vehicles easy targets at night, they have a much harder time picking this thing up. And then there's the detail that made me stop and read it twice. EMP shielding. This vehicle's electronics are hardened against electromagnetic pulse, nuclear detonation at altitude, directed energy weapons, whatever kills every other vehicle on the road, the EQ 2050 keeps running. It's got a GM 6.5-liter V8 turbo diesel under the hood, same proven American engine, and a central tire inflation system, so the driver adjusts tire pressure from inside the cab while moving. Sand, mud, rubble, doesn't matter. Number 9. BAW BJ212, China. If the EQ 2050 is China's high-tech answer to modern warfare, the BJ212 is what China used for everything before that, and it never really stopped. This thing debuted in 1965. The Cultural Revolution was just getting started. China's interior was largely unpaved. The government needed something that a soldier with basic training could drive, fix, and trust with his life across terrain that maps hadn't caught up to yet. What they built was a Sino-Soviet hybrid, chassis and axle straight from the Soviet Gaz-69, domestic 2.5-liter engine on top, boxy canvas roof, no frills, zero pretense, and it became the face of Chinese government and military mobility for 2 decades. Here's the thing nobody talks about. It's a soft-skinned vehicle, no armor, no electronics you need a computer to understand, nothing sealed away that requires a dealership. Every component was designed to be fixed by someone with a wrench and a moderate amount of stubbornness. Number 8. Kia Retona, South Korea. Most Americans have never heard of this one, and that's a shame because its origin story starts with us. South Korea's entire off-road industry essentially grew out of assembling Jeeps for American forces and the UN command during and after the Korean War. Korean engineers learned the bones of military vehicle design from the inside out. They weren't guessing, they'd been building them. The Kia Retona showed up in 1997 as the civilian version of the KM-131, the standard light utility vehicle of the South Korean Army. Same basic platform. The military version ended up exported to Chile, Indonesia, several other operators. Number 7. ARO 24 series, Romania. Every vehicle we've covered so far either borrowed from the Soviets or borrowed from the Americans. Romania looked at both options and basically said, no thanks, we'll handle it. That's not just national pride. That stubbornness produced one of the most adaptable 4x4s ever put into production. The ARO 24 came out in 1972. Ceausescu's Romania was deliberately keeping its distance from Soviet orthodoxy at this point. Moscow expected Eastern Bloc nations to run Gaz and UAZ vehicles. Romania built their own anyway. And what they built was genuinely ahead of the curve. Independent front suspension, something the UAZ 469 didn't have. A curved chassis for better ride comfort. And from day one, they designed the engine bay to accept whatever was available. Over the production run, which went all the way to 2006, the ARO 24 got engines from Toyota, Ford, Peugeot, Cosworth, and Romanian manufacturer Indoria. The most absurd version had a 4.0-liter Ford Cosworth V6, making 207 horsepower and hitting 112 miles per hour. Number 6. Sangyong Korando K9, South Korea. The name is a contraction of Korea Can Do. Guinness recognizes it as Korea's longest surviving nameplate, but it's the second generation, the Mercedes era, where the real story lives. First generation was a Jeep CJ7 derivative. Korean engineers learned that platform completely, understood every inch of it. Then, in 1996, they scrapped it and rebuilt from scratch with one very deliberate decision. They licensed Mercedes-Benz engine technology. The 2.9-liter OM602 diesel is not just an engine. Among long-distance overlanders, European taxi fleets, and off-road communities worldwide, this thing is a legend. Documented cases of it running past 400,000 miles on basic maintenance. It handles low-quality fuel without drama. You don't need sophisticated diagnostic equipment to keep it alive. When something goes wrong, a mechanic with hand tools can fix it in the field. The K9 was the extended 9-seat version. Stretched wheelbase, serious interior volume, body-on-frame, double wishbone front suspension, live rear axle. A proper truck wearing a family hauler's clothing. For a survival situation where you're moving a group, family, neighbors, community, the K9 hits a combination that almost nothing else does. Interior space, diesel range, and a powertrain that keeps running long after more sophisticated engines have given up. Number 5. Luaz 967, Ukraine USSR. Everything up to this point has been a conventional vehicle. 4 wheels, get in, drive. The Luaz 967 is something genuinely different. After Korea, Soviet military planners were studying battlefield evacuation and kept running into the same problem. When bridges are gone and roads are destroyed, how do you extract wounded soldiers? Helicopters get shot down. Standard vehicles can't cross rivers. Their answer was a vehicle that was also, functionally, a boat. The Luaz 967, official designation, transporter of the front line, was built specifically for the Soviet airborne forces. Small enough to parachute drop, light enough to float, designed to go where nothing else would follow. The details are almost hard to believe. The driver sits in the center of the vehicle, not on either side. Both flanks of the cabin are kept clear for stretchers. 2 casualties load on either side of the driver. He keeps moving. In an emergency, the steering wheel folds flat. The windshield folds down, and the driver operates the vehicle in a semi-prone position, the lowest possible profile to incoming fire. The engine is air-cooled. No radiator, no coolant hoses, no water pump. A radiator punctured by shrapnel can kill a conventional vehicle within minutes. This engine doesn't have that problem because it doesn't have a radiator. Water propulsion, 3 kilometers per hour, driven by the wheels themselves spinning in the water. No secondary system to fail. The steel body is just a sealed tub. More than 7,900 of the 916M were built between 1961 and 1991. It is the most specialized vehicle on this list.
Now we're at the foundation, the machines that everything else was either built from, inspired by, or trying to surpass. The GAZ-69 entered production in August 1953. The war had been over 8 years. The Soviet Union had spent those years studying what the American Willys MB, the original Jeep, had actually taught them about keeping armies moving. The GAZ-69 was the answer. A vehicle designed to be kept alive by a conscript soldier with basic tools anywhere on the Eurasian continent. Chief designer Grigory Wasserman made the defining call: build it around components from the GAZ M20 Pobeda passenger car. The engine, the transmission, all proven civilian technology already in mass circulation. The logic was purely strategic. The Soviet Union had millions of Pobeda cars across the country. Parts were everywhere. A broken GAZ-69 deep in Siberia was never far from a working parts source. The dual fuel tank system is what gets survivalists' attention first. A 47-liter primary tank under the floor, a 28-liter secondary under the passenger seat. Total, 75 liters. One tank gets punctured by shrapnel or a rock, the mission continues. The GAZ-69 was the standard military Jeep across the Eastern Bloc, and its influence spread further than most people realize. When China needed a military vehicle in the mid-60s, they took the GAZ-69's chassis and axles as the starting point for the BJ-212. The portal axle technology that would define the UAZ 469 was developed in response to what the GAZ-69 couldn't do. Produced from 1953 to 1972, exported across the developing world, this vehicle is the genetic code that runs through everything Soviet on this list.
Number 2. Lada Niva,
Russia, USSR. Let me ask you something. What vehicle has been in continuous production since 1977, costs under $4,000 new in parts of the world right now, ran for a decade in Antarctica, and still cannot legally be imported to the United States? The Lada Niva. And before you write it off, this is the vehicle that invented the modern compact SUV, not hyperbole. The concept of a car-based unibody 4x4 with permanent all-wheel drive, the Porsche Cayenne, the BMW X5, every Ford Escape that ever existed, they all trace that lineage back to a Soviet vehicle designed for collective farm workers in 1977. Every 4x4 at that time was body on frame, heavy, agricultural, rough on pavement. Soviet designers asked a different question. What if you took the off-road ability of a Land Rover and put it in something that weighed as much as a compact hatchback? The result? 1,150 kilograms, lighter than almost anything comparable. Permanent four-wheel drive, central differential with a manual lock, 2-speed transfer case, 235 millimeters of ground clearance. Engine from the Vaz 2106 sedan, shared with millions of Lada cars across Eurasia, so parts are genuinely everywhere. UAZ 469, Russia, USSR. 3 stock UAZ 469s. Mount Elbrus, the highest peak in Europe. Altitude of 4,200 meters. Glaciers. Near vertical inclines. Air thin enough to cut engine power by 40%. Not one of them broke down. That's the whole argument right there. But let's get into why. The military UAZ 469's signature feature is the portal axle system. On most 4x4s, the wheel connects directly to the axle shaft. The axle runs through the center of the wheel. Portal axles add a gear reduction at each individual wheel hub, which drops the axle center line below the wheel center line. The result? 300 millimeters of ground clearance. Nearly 12 inches between the belly of the vehicle and the ground. A fully loaded military UAZ 469 can step over obstacles that would high center a stock Wrangler.